The notion around IndyVitals is that there's the homepage where you can choose an area that you want to learn information about. You click on that and you get a dashboard and information about it. So the first question is, since these neighborhoods don't conform to necessarily your boundaries, how do you find the area that's relevant to you? There are 3 ways in which you can do that. We have an alphabetical listing. So if there's some areas, say like Broad Ripple, that you're familiar with, you can select a neighborhood that way. You can just zoom around the map. If you kind of know generally the area, you see the neighborhood names pop up as you are going around the site. I know you can't necessarily read everything that's up there. And then you just click on it. Or we also have a Google search. So maybe you know the address, so like where we are now, 15 North Meridian Street. You type it in, it puts a point on the map, and then you can figure out which neighborhood it is. So it's very easy. Just like Google, you can search by intersection, by place name, such as Fall Creek Place or Fountain Square, and then you get the neighborhood. I'm going to just click on Mapleton Fall Creek to walk through as an example today. And I'm going to increase the size a bit just so it's a little bit easier to see. So what you see is a dashboard that comes up for the neighborhood. So up in the upper left corner, you see a little thumbnail map that kind of shows you where that neighborhood is in respect to the county. And then you see on the right side a little more detailed map that shows you the bounding streets and kind of more details about that, where the neighborhood is. There's a link here that says how are the neighborhoods defined. That's that whole process that Brad described, so you can get more information about that background if you'd like it. You can get just a summary of the neighborhood's general demographics. So there's about 6,500 people in this particular neighborhood area that we're looking at. Poverty rate's about 20%. The median age is about 41. And the median household income is about $31,800. What you'll also notice is once you start scrolling down, you start to see a lot of data in the dashboard. So on the left side, you get several categories. So we have information that's, first of all, there are about 50 metrics about the health and sustainability of neighborhoods in this dashboard. Those were selected through a process. It started out with the STAR Communities rating system that measures sustainability of neighborhoods, and then through an advisory committee, we vetted those and refined that list. So the topics are things like built environment, economy and jobs, education, health and safety, and then within each of those topic areas, we have several different metrics that measure the health and sustainability of communities. So first you get kind of the overall demographics. You get information about the built environment and several metrics around that, and you can scroll down and see several more. You then can see on the right side, there's this series of numbers and visuals and graphics shown at you. So just kind of walk you through what that is. What this is intended to do is tell you, how is the neighborhood doing right now? How has it changed over time? How does it compare to the neighborhood and to the larger metro area? So the first column, and I'm going to zoom in just a bit just to make it easier to see. What you see is the current value. So the population figure, for example, is about 6,500 people. Median age, people of color in this particular neighborhood makes up about 77%. So you can see the current value. So the second column is how the neighborhood has changed since 2010. So over the past 5 years, what's changed about it? So white coloring means that there's really not a negative or positive connotation. So like age, doesn't matter if the population's older or younger from the standpoint of community development. Red means things have gotten worse. Green means things have gotten better. So in this case, median household income, it's at about $31,800. It's dropped about $2,300 in the past 5 years. The next column is the rank. So there's 99 different neighborhoods in Marion County. So this shows you the rank within those 99. So the median household income, this neighborhood, Mapleton Fall Creek, ranks 78th out of 99. So number 1 is always best, 99 is always worst. In things that are neutral, it's like the largest is number 1. So the largest population is number 1. And then how has the rank changed? So median household income, the rank's gone up 1 since 2010. Then we can look at how that neighborhood compares kind of in the broader context. So how is it compared to the county? So this, the median household income is about $10,000 less than the average or the median income for the county as a whole. It's about $20,000 less than the metro and about $16,000 less than the state. So it gives you a lot of information where you can really just quickly see how a neighborhood's doing on a particular metric and how it compares. And I'm going to scroll through just to kind of see what we can learn about this neighborhood just at this level, kind of dashboard level. So under built environment, for example, we can look at walkability. And sometimes there isn't comparative data. Maybe we only have the current year, so there's not historic trends. So you'll see some NAs. It's just a data availability issue. But it ranks 5th on walkability, which is great. Housing cost burdened, that means that people are spending more than 30% of their income on housing, whether it's rent or ownership. They're spending so much on housing that they may not have enough to cover other needs, even the basic needs. So we want to look at that as a measure. Basically, almost 1 out of every 2 people are spending more than 30% of their income on housing, which makes them vulnerable to be able to meet their day-to-day needs. Assessed values, 80% or 80,000 compared to the county, which is much lower than, or about 7,800 lower than the county. A vacancy rate, almost 1 out of 3 units is vacant in this community, much lower than the county as a whole. We can look at unemployment rates. We can say 15% of the population here is unemployed. We can also look at education. So only 1 out of 4 people, 26%, have more than a high school degree, so have some kind of college degree, either associate's, graduate degree, or more. You can see quality, do residents have access to quality childcare, preschool? And so we can measure that by looking at whether daycare centers are measured, are rated as a high quality, and do residents live within a radius of, I think it's 1 mile of that. So in this case, again, another positive metric is that 100% of the residents are within a mile or quarter mile, rather, of neighborhood high quality childcare. So you can start to see, I mean, you can get a lot of information just looking at this dashboard. Poverty rate's about 20%, which is right on par with the rest of the county. And you can start to, you know, there's just lots of information. Another thing I want to point out is we have this executive view, which kind of gives you the highlights. If you click view all, you get all 50 of those metrics. So if you really want to dig into, you know, some of the more details of those areas, you can do that. There's also this link to how to read data that kind of gives you what the arrows and how to interpret, you know, what's on the dashboard. That information will probably be useful to look at as well. Now, if you want to dig deeper, so this is kind of giving you that surface level, kind of snapshot of the community. Let's say you want to dig deeper and see what's going on with some of these particular metrics. You can start to do that. You'll notice these little plus signs beside each of the metrics. You can click on that, and it's going to bring up a little more detailed information about each of those. So if you want to start looking at trends, how things have changed over time in more detail, and do some more detailed comparison, you can do that. So I'm going to, let's start with walkability as an example. Actually, I'm going to start with unemployment as an example. So what we've done is, excuse me, pulled together the data into easy-to-use visualization, so you can look at the trends. Bar charts make it pretty clear, you know, how the neighborhood compares to the different geographic areas. You can look at a map if you want to see that, you know, geographically how that compares. You can see the count or your particular area that you're interested in highlighted. You can see that kind of falls in the middle. You can also get some of the tabular data. But one thing that I really want to point out here is that we not only just provide you the total for how that particular neighborhood's doing, but we also let you explore and dig deeper to see, are there different demographics that are disproportionately impacted by an issue than others? So you can slice the data and look at it, say, for example, by income. So are people in poverty more impacted by an issue than people not? You can look at it by race. Are people of a certain race more impacted by an issue than others? You can also look at it by education levels and so forth. So just to give you an example, When we look at unemployment rates, remember for the county, I'm sorry, for the neighborhood is about 15%. But when you look at it by poverty status, you can see that folks in poverty have 25% unemployment rate compared to 5% for those who aren't in poverty. I mean, it's very clear here, and the direction for those that are in poverty, it's going up at a much faster rate, whereas it's going down for those who aren't in poverty. And you can look at that by race as well. And you can see there's definite differences. If you look at whites, for example, compared to the black population in this particular neighborhood, you can definitely see some gaps and disparities when we start to dig into that data. So when we looked at unemployment, so we see that we've got an unemployment rate of 15%. We have only 26% of the population that has a high school degree. And jobs, remember the population is about 6,500. There's about 1,600 jobs in this neighborhood. There's a different metric in here that shows who's working in the neighborhood in which they live. So resident employment in the neighborhood. So only 2% of people who live in that neighborhood are actually working in that neighborhood. So it's really walkable. It's got a good access to quality care, but people are not working in that community. So we start to look back at some of the jobs data. We can start to explore what kinds of opportunities are available within that community. So you look at, for example, there aren't a significant proportion of the jobs available like in food service or retail. A lot of the jobs are in finance, healthcare, those that are more likely to require higher levels of education. So you can start, there's just so much you can start to just dig into. You can play with this. I could play with it forever. But it's incredible the way it starts to tell the story. And it gets, like Brad was saying, it puts everyone on the same page. It points out some of the disparities, the gaps, the needs. It also highlights some of the successes, and it's all right there. Just within 10 minutes, you can start to piece together the story. It is important to note that this is just the starting point for the conversation. It doesn't answer all the questions, and in fact, it's probably going to raise a lot more questions. You're going to want to bring to the table your own perceptions, your own knowledge of those communities. So digging deeper as to what's going on with this particular metric, what may be influencing that, or what we might want to dig deeper into in terms of the data. So this is, again, a really great starting point to piece together that story. Excuse me, I did want to also point out there is a third layer of detail for the...
Everybody take a deep breath.
Yes. So for those of you who really want to go hog wild and dig into and explore trends and start to maybe look at how some of these things are interrelated, we have an advanced tab that I didn't click on before for very good reasons. As an example, let's say we want to look at education levels. And we go to this little tab. So you got your nice trends, you got pie charts, and then you go to this little tab that's advanced, exploring trends in higher education. So what this is intended to do is to bring together multiple dimensions that we've looked at, so multiple metrics. So not just look at education, but look at how that relates to some of these other factors that are also in the system. So boom, don't blow your mind with this, but basically right now this is bringing together 4 different variables, and it's all tied to place. So this map in the upper left is showing education attainment levels, so darker colors represent higher education levels. Each of these are the neighborhoods that we've been talking about, but you'll notice over here the points each represent a neighborhood also, and then down here on the bar chart, the bars represent neighborhoods. So on the top we're looking at education attainment. At the bottom this is income. So the higher the bar, the higher the income of that neighborhood. And on the upper right we're looking at a scatter plot that shows housing cost burden on the y-axis and population without health insurance on the x-axis. So it lets you explore the data and look at what might be interesting in terms of trends. So let's select, for example, those neighborhoods that have high education attainment. Down at the bottom, you can see they also have the highest income levels. The higher bars, again, represent higher incomes. They all fall in the far right of that. On this chart over here, the dots that appear are neighborhoods that have low proportion of people have low housing cost burden, and they have a fewer proportion of people without health insurance. You do the opposite. You start to look at those areas that have low education attainment. You get the opposite story. Lower incomes, more people without health insurance, more people paying too much for their homes. each of the metrics that we have, or most of the metrics we have, set up something like this that lets you just dig deeper into the data. So once you get familiar with it, it's really not as intimidating as it seems when you first pull it up. And I promise you it's fun. All right. And one last thing I want to point out is the rankings. For example, with like walkability, I skipped over the data table. In most cases, you get charts and maps. This is the walkability score. Remember, we said it ranks 5th. So if you want to see that, kind of comparative. By the way, what is a walk score? Where did that come from? There's a couple of tabs I wanted to point out. This tab called About the Data, that always gives you the description of the data source, what this indicator is, what it means, how it's defined, why it's important. If there's some limitations in the data, I'll tell you none of this data is perfect. It's a great starting point. It tells you, some of the basic trends and some of the patterns, but you always want to kind of dig deeper and know, okay, what's the limitations? What are things I should be concerned about as I'm considering this data? So that's all in the About the Data tab. The data table allows you to kind of sort, and if you wanted to download this and do some manipulation yourself, you could do that. When we talk about walk score, which by the way is something developed by walkscore.com, there's this algorithm they use that looks at how walkable neighborhoods are based on sidewalks and intersections and destinations and public transportation and several other factors. But when you come to the table, you can sort this, say by geography name or walk score. We also have bike score, transit score. The rank column becomes interesting. So if you wanted to see that neighborhood, downtown's number 1, not surprising, Broad Ripple, and then here Mapleton Fall Creek ranks 5th. So there's so much data. You can export visualizations into JPEG to put into presentations or reports. You can print from here. There's a print option to print the dashboard, or you can download all the data for the neighborhood. That's all right here.